We have good and bad news from the Buccaneers. We're going to start off with the good news first because we're all about pushing positivity here on JT Sports. We are pushing P. The Bucs are extending general manager Jason Licht, who is one of the longest tenured GMs in the NFL, and he's one of the five best in the sport at the moment. He's really good at making great bargain free agency signings. You are not paying top 10 money to a guy in Baker Mayfield who's giving you top 10 level quarterback play. Normally, when you have a quarterback that has balled out the way Baker has the last couple of seasons in Tampa, he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks in the league, and yet he's on a team-friendly deal for the Bucs. Jason Licht is also prolific at drafting. He doesn't whiff on too many of his first-round picks, and he's incredible at identifying talent in the later portions of the draft, which is why the Buccaneers have a team that's good enough to win the Super Bowl going into this season. The bad news is that the Buccaneers have extended head coach Todd Bowles, and they are going to continue to allow him to waste a Super Bowl caliber roster. And you may be asking to yourself, why is there so much hate for Todd Bowles, a guy that has won the NFC South for 3 consecutive years in a row? He's been to the playoffs every season that he has been the head coach of Tampa Bay. He's a solid coach, and you're right about that. But that's the issue. Todd Bowles is a solid coach, and solid coaches don't win you Super Bowls. Todd Bowles isn't good enough to beat Dan Campbell or Sean McVay in the postseason. And he's supposed to be a defensive-minded coach, but anytime his team goes up against an elite quarterback or a rookie, they seem to always be a no-show. A few months ago, we saw Jaden Daniels look like he was throwing passes against air on Todd Bowles' defense. Every time the Commanders were in a fourth down situation, they were automatic. It seemed like you knew they were just going to convert because it was a Todd Bowles defense. And let's not forget, when C.J. Stroud threw for half of 1,000 yards and a million gazillion touchdowns in his rookie season against Todd Bowles' defense. For a guy that has the prestige that Todd Bowles has as a prolific defensive mind, you never see it show up against some of the best quarterbacks in the league. He also is poor in one-possession matchups. The Bucs had the worst record in one-score games last year. They were 2-6. You want to know why? Because they were a poorly coached team. The difference between the Chiefs, the Bills, the Ravens, and the Eagles is that they are well coached enough that they can win a tightly contested game. And that's why those teams are always in the forefront of the Super Bowl conversation, and is why the Buccaneers continue to come up short in the playoffs. The Buccaneers have peaked under Todd Bowles. Injuries is not a valid excuse to use to defend Todd Bowles when we saw the Lions last year have the best record in the NFC with the majority of their best players on defense in the freaking hospital bed. If you are a good coach, you can find ways to overcome injuries, especially if a lot of those injuries are on the side of the ball that you specialize the most in. The Bucs are not going to win a Super Bowl with Todd Bowles as the head coach. And the next question is going to be, well, Todd Bowles isn't good enough. Who do we get to replace him, genius? That's not the point. The point is that you roll the dice and try to find a head coach that can elevate you further than what Todd Bowles has. Todd Bowles is the equivalent to what Bill O'Brien was when he was with the Houston Texans, and he was dominating the AFC South because he had a more talented roster than everybody else in that division. He had a prime Deshaun Watson, DeAndre Hopkins, and J.J. Watt, which is why the Texans normally dominated this AFC South the majority of the years when B.O.B. was the head coach. And when they got to the playoffs, despite how talented that team was, the furthest they could go under Bill O'Brien was the second round of the playoffs. Because the further you go in the postseason, not only are you going up against teams as good as what you are, but they have just as good, if not better, coaching than what you do, and that's the difference in the postseason, and Todd Bowles just isn't good enough to get it done. And when the Buccaneers were in this same situation decades ago with Tony Dungy, they fired him and they replaced him with John Gruden. And the first year they had John Gruden as their head coach, they won the Super Bowl. Extending Todd Bowles is a blasphemous move. This came prematurely. You did not have to extend him before the season, when last year the Buccaneers were on the brink of missing the playoffs and not winning this division until Kirk Cousins threw the NFC South title away for the Falcons and helped the Bucs get back into the race, and they ultimately won the division because of how bad Kirk Cousins played down the stretch. But this year, though, the Falcons aren't too far off from being as good as what the Buccaneers have been, and they also have the coaching advantage with Raheem Morris getting the best of Todd Bowles the 2 times the Falcons played last year. This division is no longer the cakewalk that it has been for Todd Bowles his first 3 years in Tampa. And I'm not saying that they're going to finish last or third in this division, but they definitely have a strong chance of losing this division to the Falcons this year. And even if they do make it to the playoffs, we know what's going to happen. It's guaranteed that the Bucs are going to be nothing more but a second-round exit at best, because when you have a mid-coach like him, he's not going to be good enough to elevate against the better coaches in the NFL. He lost to Dan Quinn, who took the Commanders to the NFC Championship in his first season coaching in Washington. That's what a well-coached team looks like. When you have great coaching, you can overcome certain roster deficiencies, especially when you have a rookie quarterback. Todd Bowles doesn't have the ability to do that. And the Buccaneers are settling by extending Todd Bowles for more years of mediocrity. Mike Evans isn't getting any younger. Neither is Levante David. How long are you going to continue to waste away the prime of some of the better players that the Buccaneers have ever had due to Todd Bowles? Tom Brady, his final season, went 8-9 and got clobbered by the Dallas Cowboys. You can say that that team wasn't that good, but I put that on Todd Bowles. This team never looked as bad under Todd Bowles as what it did with Bruce Arians at the helm. Some guys are just good coordinators, and Todd Bowles is one of those coaches. Yes, he has had success, but relative to the amount of talent that the Bucs have had these past 2 years, they have underachieved. And they're going to underachieve again. If you think that this team is a dark horse Super Bowl contender, you're right to believe that. Because from a roster standpoint, they have a top 5 team. But from a coaching standpoint, they are one of the worst in the league. And that's why I can't take Todd Bowles seriously. And that's why the Bucs made a poor decision to extend him before this season started. This was the year that Todd Bowles had to prove himself. He had to prove that he can actually maximize an elite team from a talent standpoint. And I don't think he's going to be able to do it.